On today's, what usually is called Fun Friday, is the least fun of all Fun Fridays possible. The San Diego Padres officially eliminated from the postseason, losing the last game against the Chicago Cubs with no offense showing up. But it is Fun Friday, so I'm being joined by Karthik Venkataraman of CBS 8 Sports to go through it all. And look, it's a safe space for all Padres fans. Don't worry, we're going to talk all about it. Biggest questions for the offseason as well. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres Podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Friday, October 3rd. As always, I'm your host with sometimes the most, certainly not the most today, Javier Reyes. I've been covering this team for nearly 6 years now, not just for this podcast, but also various other outlets, including justbaseball.com, Chief among them. Today's show, guys, is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. And for today's show, I am being joined by my good buddy Karthik Venkataraman of CBS 8 Sports San Diego. He is not live on the scene, but he is live on our screens and in your ears, saying, "Hey, man, we're here, safe space for Padres fans. We're going to talk all about yesterday's game, the general vibes of the team. And honestly, this is going to be a super stat-heavy show. I don't want to do all of that. We're just going to kind of let it out. And then final segment, going to talk about the biggest questions that I have, the immediate big questions for the offseason. But Karthik, man, how are you holding up? You doing all right?
The vibes are off, man. I mean, what is this? We after the trade deadline, Padres Nation was so hyped that this team maybe had all the pieces that they need, from the hitting to the bullpen, to get things going. And all of a sudden, the Padres are out in the NL wildcard series to the Cubs, man. I mean, like, it's a bummer, especially because the Padres gave you that one last glimmer of hope at the end of the season where they're starting to put the runs up on the board. Pitching is looking good enough, and you're like, okay, this team's about to make some noise with some momentum, and then the offense falls flat. Pitching wasn't bad. Injuries like Ramon Laureano and Jason Adam ended up being big talking points by the end of the year. We didn't know how big they would be as the NL Wild Card Series came, but I don't know, man. For what felt like at the trade deadline, like all of a sudden this team's going to be one of the most dangerous, to sitting where we are now, it feels like a disappointment.
Look, let's just start at the end there, having hope for a second. I will say that personally, having covered this team for a while, this is not nearly as bad of a loss as the others that I've experienced. Last year, obviously being number one, the NLCS against the Phillies, even the wild card against the Dodgers back in 2020, or I think it was the NLDS against the Dodgers in 2020. That was the coming out party, and it still stunk a little bit because it was the Dodgers, but overall, it was just really tough, man. And I know that a lot of people, I just want to come out and say, look, the Cubs defense played phenomenal this year. Dansby Swanson couldn't hit the ball to save his life, but this is why defense matters sometimes, right? Nico Horner, a couple of good plays. And Ryan O'Hearn, great series for him. That could have been even better, arguably getting 3 hits, 3 on bases, robbed from him. But so again, got to give them a lot of credit. And I know that there's going to be some Padres fans saying, dude, we got robbed. Bring in the ABS system now. Xander Bogaerts with a really, really bad strike they called. That is objectively true. It should have been a walk. And considering that, Keller hits the next 2 batters, and then Merrill has had a solo shot in that inning already. There's a little bit of a dang, like, what if it was bases loaded, nobody out? Do things change? But you can't go that direction. Bottom line is that the Padres, Tatis 0 for 4 with 3 Ks. Manny goes 0 for. Darvish, I mean, he's been on the watch for a while. After yesterday's game, only lasting inning, and don't get me wrong, that was not the reason they lost, because the pitching was outstanding yesterday, but it was just like, yeah, we might have to, time of death for Darvish, you know what I mean? The monitor isn't picking up any signs of life for him. He's obviously going to be on the team still next year with the contract, but not great for him. But it's just really tough, man. And I will say that I had predicted the Cubs. People who watched the crossover on Tuesday know I picked the Cubs to win the series. My reasoning was that I just didn't trust the offense enough. And that's what happened here. You basically had a series, more or less, Karthik, where you got one major hit, and that was the Manny Machado home run in game 2. Other than that, and don't get me wrong, I understand Jackson Merrill's hit was good, but like runners on base is the story for the Padres this series. In scoring position, they're like, 2 of 23 in this series. I don't have the number right in front of me, but they were 1 of 12 in the second game, and then they were 0 for in the first game. Just really, really bad stuff from the team. And I'm sad, right? Like, I still want to keep covering the team. And like you said, they had a big trade deadline. So there's a lot of expectations for this team. There's a lot of hope that maybe they could come out and be great. But unfortunately, this Cubs team they had it more. They had the home field advantage, and they just got this round. And now we have what is going to be a very, dare I say, one of the longest off seasons vibes-wise for the Padres upcoming.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting offseason with all the guys that are, unrestricted free agents, guys that have options, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I mean, the Padres had 1,000,001 opportunities to get some hits, and it's really disappointing when Tatis bats under 100, Manny Machado bats about 100. Like, that doesn't help. Xander Bogaerts and Freddie Fermin hit well, as you mentioned. Ryan O'Hearn got robbed of some hits. It just wasn't there. I picked the Cubs in 3 on our streaming show for CBSA. And my reason was, though, the opposite side. I felt like the offense kind of turned it on at the end, but I didn't really trust outside of Nick Pivetta the pitching. Like, I just didn't know what it was going to be like. I mean, we'd see Michael King not really get into full shape. I know he didn't end up being named a starter. He was used out of the pen for an inning in game 3. I didn't know what Darvish would be, even though, like, he hasn't given up a bunch of runs and he's given pretty good innings. Dylan Cease, but I thought Dylan Cease pitched really well. Nick Pivetta pitched overall well. It's just they didn't put up the runs. You can give up 2, 3, still win a baseball game. But when you score 1-0, makes it harder. It makes it a lot harder. 1 run's not good enough. It's just not. And, as you said, outside of that, not one big hit from Manny Machado.
Yeah.
They're 1 run pretty much every single game. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Like, and the first game was like a sack, right? Like, this is just a team, you're just begging for them to get that 1 double. And again, it might be, I'm going to talk about this offseason, but like, this could also be a roster building strategy. We know the Padres are all about base hits and wanting to have low strikeouts, but you have seen in the playoffs, and you see every year, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have your Luis Arraez, Jake Cronenworth, Xander Bogaerts types, but guess what? You know what has decided series? Big home runs, right? And just a team that, and forget home runs, just extra base hits. Things that aren't little grounders right through the infield or little bloopers, but instead stuff that you're like, wow, that was a bomb, that was a double, all these sort of things. And some guys that show up, got to give a shout out to Jackson Merrill, the early favorite to lead the Padres in all, frankly, like advanced statistics next year. That guy might be a 7-win player next year. He was awesome towards the end of the year and had a very good series as well. I love just seeing like him get that solo home run and yelling at Bogey, like, come on, let's do this. But unfortunately, too little, too late, but not too little and not too late for you guys to stay tuned on this. I messed that up. Not too little info on today's podcast. I almost had it, man. I'm not as, TV refined as you are, but we're going to keep talking about this series, talk a little bit about the pitching and a little bit of a Mike Shildt decision that I think is worth at least bringing up, although that certainly isn't the person to blame. You're listening to Locked On Padres podcast, guys. Be right back. Let me just tell you guys real quick about one of our sponsors. That is our friends Prize Picks, folks. We love it. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. So if you were like Karthik and me and you had some very Cubs heavy bets, boom, they can help you out. Don't miss the excitement also of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's really good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football because you just pick more or less. That's it. On player projections, you need 2 to 6 wins, and then you win for your lineup. It's great. Want to have Josh Allen passing yards. You want to have Quentin Johnson reception yards. Whatever you want to have, you can do it. You could stay in the game. And they just added a stacks feature. So if you want to ride with a certain player, you could select their pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. And new injury reboot feature as well. If your player leaves early and doesn't return, it's not going to count to you in your lineup. It's not going to count as a loss. That's great. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. It's good to be right with PrizePicks. And just like that, everybody, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast. Not thriving. We're vibing a little bit, though, because I love talking with my man, Karthik Venkataraman of CBS 8 Sports San Diego. Go check him out on and whatever they do, all the great work they do over there in San Diego. I visited him in person recently. He is the man. But Darvish wasn't the man in today's game. There was some momentum positive after game 2 for the Padres because you have Dylan Cease doesn't go far into the game, but gets pulled at the time when we saw that he was getting pulled, or I'm sorry, that he usually gets hit in the regular season. So that ended up great. Bullpen goes off. Adrian Morejon, the Mason Miller viral pitches that I've seen all over Reddit and whatnot over the last 24 hours. And then you have Darvish, who only goes an inning in this game, unfortunately. He looked really bad. It wasn't lucky hits that the Cubs were getting. They were ripping the ball. Kudos to Mike Shildt taking him out. Jeremiah Estrada, just a tiny little nice little moment. That guy's been struggling like crazy for the past couple months. I still think he has crazy talent. Comes in, bases loaded, no outs, and an elimination game is an impossibly hard situation. He does allow one walk, but gets out of the jam, gets the double play, and he goes one more inning after that. And then for the rest of the game, Michael King goes one inning. You get Wandy Peralta. He does okay. Robert Suarez doesn't give up a run with a solo shot, but at the same time, look, the bullpen was gassed. They were using all these guys, Bordelon and Morgan. They showed up. Not much to complain about there. I will bring up, though, Michael King only going one inning, I think is something that is going to be a question for people because, look, again, the storyline and the reason they lost is not pitching. Just for sake of asking the question, it is very weird that Michael King, a starting pitcher, who has been a multi-inning reliever before, so I thought he was going to go maybe 2-3 innings. And instead, Shildt defers and decides to go with some of these guys like Suarez and Morejon, who might be a little bit gassed. You saw what happened with Suarez. It's a little bit of a question. So what I'm saying now is not even blaming Mike Shildt as much, but if you're a Padres fan, you've got to be wondering, like, is there anything going on with Michael King? Does he have a little bit of an injury? Was it just a matchup thing? I don't know exactly, but that was definitely one thing that I noticed for sure.
Could you imagine telling a Padres fan before the season, you're going to get to the postseason, you're going to be in the NL wild card, and Michael King's only going to go pitch one inning in the 3-game series?
Yeah.
Could you imagine telling Padres fans that? I mean, like, I know, like, you don't give them the full context of the nerve injury he had in his shoulder. You don't give him the full context that he'd go through a left knee inflammation injury and that he'd be on the IL for a really long time and he missed a lot of games and he really wasn't able to get built up. But it is just crazy that he did not pitch more in game 3 of this game. Mm-hmm. When we came into this postseason and Mike Shildt had named, Nick Pivetta, Dylan Cease, Darvish, I figured what was going to happen was Cease was going to pitch 3 or 4. You bring in Michael King for 3, maybe. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of ride it out and see what happens because I know King hasn't been fantastic. I mean, that Mets start was awful. And, when he started against the White Sox there towards the end of the year, he left the bases loaded by the time he left the game. He was still struggling with his control. I get it. But as you mentioned, because you had just used Mason Miller for an extended period of time, pitched him in both. You had Adrian Morejon. You pitched him a lot. Robert Suarez, as early as he was a little bit of surprise. But I mean, that, as we know, they didn't really have that many people, which is kind of why I refer back to why Jason Adam not being a part of this team in the postseason was a big loss. But I was scratching my head a little bit when Michael King didn't go, a couple of innings because he threw well in the inning that he pitched. And, it felt like he was good. Didn't really feel like he wasn't having his control. I'd have given him at least the start of the inning and see how he did. And, I think for Suarez to go as long as he did, I know that Mike Shildt said in the post-game press conference that he was fresh and they really hadn't used him much because, had some time off. And then game 2 was, when he pitched. But it just felt, I don't know, man. They never use Robert Suarez. And I mean, they have, but like not commonly in an extended period like that where he's getting over 30 pitches. And I do feel like that's the reason why Bush was able to hit that home run. I don't think Suarez is used to keeping his stuff going for as long as he did. And as you said, it didn't end up costing him, but maybe it could have. Who knows? You alluded to it earlier, and you're like, I don't want to talk about the ands, ifs, and buts of Xander Bogaerts getting on base. But if you are in a bases-loaded situation with no outs, let's just say that's what ended up happening, and you're only down a run compared to 2, it changes the ball game a lot. Right. And you got to play for not at the end of the day. Bullpen, with Suarez only gave up 1 inning. Adrian Morejon, despite how much he's pitched, came in and was phenomenal. You have that, but in a series where you knew it was going to be tight, why even risk give up a run? It's kind of the question that I asked. Not that Michael King may have not have, but that's just kind of where I was.
And again, we got to wait to see. Maybe we're going to get a report that's like Michael King's injury was bad, and they were like, we don't know if he's going to fall apart. I even floated a conspiracy to my man Big Jim Grease, who does the postcast here for the Locked Up Padres channel. But I floated a conspiracy theory, like, is there a Josh Hader situation going on? For those who don't remember, Josh Hader very infamously basically was like, I'm not pitching more than my usual 3 outs because I'm a free agent and I got screwed over by the Brewers so many times. Michael King, potentially a free agent. Like, is that part of this? I don't really think so. Again, this is me just being totally hypothetical, and this is all pure speculation, and it's frankly probably wrong, but it is something that popped into my head because it was such a bizarre decision. But, and like you said, 1-run lead, maybe that changes things dramatically. It's true. It makes you think, like, why aren't you saving some of your bullpen guys for a little bit later, or having Michael King go longer, especially when he struck out 3 batters in his 1 inning appearance in this one. So that is a question. But again, it's all about the offense, man. I mean, a nightmarish series for Jake Cronenworth in particular. I don't believe he got a hit in this series. No, I don't think he made some contact, right? And he didn't swing at the worst pitches, but the contact wasn't good. He couldn't draw any walks. Freddie Fermin, an amazing final game, right? Not only does he get 2 hits, he rips a double in this one.
He played well in the series.
He played well in the series. He had some clutch factor to him. Throws out 2 runners in this game. He showed up, right? Xander Bogaerts, considering that he's been this roller coaster of just, I think the W for Xander Bogaerts this year was just like, okay, thank God he's at least a serviceable, like at least he's a serviceable player, right? Because there was a moment this year where it was like, this guy's a 240 hitter and we have him for 9 years. At least he's going to at least be okay, a slightly above average player. And he did slightly above average player things in this series, right? He had some walks, the stolen base, should have had another walk at the end of the game. So he was fine. And Manny Machado has the 1 hit, but then it's like Tatis 0 for 4 with 3 Ks. The swings that he had too. I mean, he looked indecisive. The half swing that he did on a pitch outside, swing and a miss, a strike on the pitch that practically almost hit him, as my dad would call it, a sucker pitch. Like, all really, really bad from this lineup, but you had some positives. But overall, the story with this Padres team all year was runners in scoring position. They just didn't do it. And this is why prioritizing some guys that, yes, they'll strike out. Yes, God forbid, they might have a low batting average. But as long as they hit for power, those are the type of players you have to try and have in your lineup sometimes. I know they're missing Laureano, but they just didn't come through in this series. And it's unfortunate because there are a lot of questions now. Unlike the Cubs, where I think that they are still on kind of the beginning of this next era of Cubs baseball post their 2016-2017 run, there's a lot more questions for the Padres because of what they gave up at the deadline. So we're going to talk about some of those questions. If Karthik has any major big questions as we head into the offseason, this is the Locked On Sad Friday Padres podcast, guys. We'll be right back in just a second. But first, let me shout out our friends over at FanDuel. With the NFL season here, FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. Whatever you want, guys. Whatever game you want. FanDuel's here for you all season long. It's great. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. And just like that, everybody, we are into the waning moments of the Locked On Padres podcast, the not so fun Friday. But I'm glad to be joined by Karthik Venkataraman of CBS 8 Sports San Diego. Let's do it, man. I mean, this is what you have to do after a season like this. AJ Preller gives up a golden egg, top-tier prospect who's like 19 years old. I'm not talking about, because some people they get a little bit confused. I'm not saying that I think that dude is necessarily going to be a stud, but it was a huge asset, right? An asset that you use to improve the team via trade. And they don't necessarily have that many guys. AJ Preller, it's going to be really interesting what he does in the offseason. Can they bring back Michael King? Is, in my opinion, one of the big first questions. He's got a mutual option. And considering that he didn't throw much in this postseason, considering that he didn't throw much this year at all, I actually think that, strangely, that could be a silver lining. Because if he did deal this season, the way that, say, Blake Snell did for the team in 2023, right? Then, exactly, you might see him go out and get paid that $150 million contract. But now, it might behoove him to maybe sign a little bit of a 2-year deal, or maybe just take the mutual option that a lot of, Boris clients tend to do, where they take the prove it deal, like a player option for 3 years. I can opt out after each one, then I could go get paid. It's potentially helpful for the club and the player. It's just a new trend that we've seen, especially with Boris clients. So that's a big question. And I think that it also goes hand in hand with whether or not Michael King potentially he was banged up and we didn't know. Maybe that's why he only went 1 inning. It was very bizarre during the broadcast where they interviewed Shildt and they're like, hey, using all the pen. And he's like, yeah, we'll find a way. And I'm like, well, the way is Michael King. So I would like to know, was he banged up? Because that was your guy to go another 2 innings potentially. So that's my first main question. And the second main question before I kick it over to you.
Sure.
Is anyone getting fired? And I am not a fan of it. Look, I'm fresh off the loss, but right now I don't want to fire anybody. I'm totally cool with Mike Shildt right now. I have some questions for him, certainly, but I would rather keep him. And AJ Preller, look, he's potentially the best scout in the game. I will say, if you are someone that is saying someone should be fired, then you would probably, just as someone who's watched sports for a while, you cannot say, well, I want to get rid of Shildt. The reason why I don't think you could do that is because this will now be like the 8th manager that AJ Preller has hired. What's the common denominator if you guys want someone fired? It's AJ Preller, right? Usually, guys, if you see an organization that hires like 10 head coaches, it's usually on the GM. And if it's not on the GM, it's on the owner. That's just in my experience. You don't just happen to get unlucky 8 times in a row with who you're hiring, right? And if you think Shilt's bad, then AJ Preller hired him. So that's a thing. But I'm not for that. But it is going to be the question. Peter Seidler's passing. He was really close with AJ Preller. Like, that was a big alliance, partnership that those two had. And with new ownership, everything's on the table potentially. So that's what I have for my 2 biggest questions. Can the team retain Michael King / was there sort of injury with him? And number 2, is AJ Preller, Mike Shildt, hitting coaches, pitching coaches, is anyone getting fired? What about you?
Yeah, Michael King, just to address that, he did say after the game that he's going to be weighing all his options. He said it would be easy for him to, after the season he had, kind of settle and, pick up that mutual option, as long as the team's willing, of course, with it being a mutual option, and stick with the Padres. But it's something he's going to have to weigh. And I do think, the Padres financially, it'll help him the fact that he didn't play games and this year. And, the Padres will probably point to that. And, they probably got him for less in the arbitration than he probably was worth coming into this year. And so I think that will kind of be played out into this upcoming contract, whether he just picks up the option, whether an extension happens. I don't know. I think it would really behoove the Padres to keep him. He's a beast. And then you assume that you're bringing back, I'm not assuming, you're bringing back Darvish, and Joe Musgrove presumably will be good to go. And hopefully he's of the Joe Musgrove of old. And obviously you're going to lose Dylan Cease, but you have Nick Pivetta, and that's pretty solid. If Michael King can stay healthy and return to what we know him to be, Nick Pivetta continues to pitch anywhere in the stratosphere of which he pitched this year. Darvish can stay healthy and return to what we believe Darvish could be. And I know those are a lot of ifs, but putting all that together, great core. We'd love to see Michael King back with the Padres, obviously. Because, it wasn't a great season for him. As for firing, I don't think there's a chance that anybody's getting fired. I just don't see it. I think that AJ Preller, I think he's going to get a little bit of a leash. Still relatively young dude. And I think he does get the job done bringing in talent. You also have to remember that San Diego's a medium-sized market. They don't have the money that the LAs and the Yankees do. So, for me, it's one of those things that I think they continue to figure out. Obviously, what is the leash on that? You have these talented players. It's not like the Padres are, just Guardians level worth of talent. That's my team, so I'm going to throw out that. But where you just have a Jose Ramirez and then you're just trying to figure out guys
careful.
You're trying to figure out guys like George Valera to come in and try and save you, and Big Christmas isn't there or whatever. Anyway, I'm on my rant because my Guardians lost. But my point being is they still have talent on the team. So that is the line at that. But, Mike Shildt, man, he's been 2 years and he's got 91 seasons in back-to-back seasons.
The best under Preller. 91 seasons. And third place being Bob Melvin in 23. Or no, I'm sorry, in 22 when he had 89 wins.
And to the other fact, this team's relevant. I know Shildt wasn't here for 4 postseasons in the last 6 seasons, but he has contributed a major part to that in back-to-back years for the first time in, quite some time. We're talking decades and years. So it's just, for me, I don't think that's going to happen. I also think the Padres are a big clubhouse, family-oriented thing. Ruben Niebla is not going anywhere. I feel like the way that he managed this bullpen, and honestly, with how injured his pitchers were, he still found ways to get stuff out of them. He's not going anywhere. So to me, I don't foresee any firings happen. I think it's just a matter of you have to reevaluate the talent on this team, and you got to figure out how it needs to be better. I don't know how that is. I'm not a general manager myself, or I'm not a manager for that matter. Or, the farthest I've ever gotten in baseball is playing bench for Little League baseball. So maybe I'm not the one to answer this question, but I do know that, for the second postseason in a row, the Padres go out in flames with their offense not coming up big.
Yep.
And Fernando Tatis Jr. talked about it after the game too. Offense wasn't good. He used more profane words than that. I'm not going to repeat them, but they're obviously not happy with, how things ended and why this offense has sputtered seemingly again in a big moment. And that's tough. That's something they got to reevaluate, and they got to figure out how they get bats consistent. And frankly, the bats weren't consistent the whole year. So, this is kind of a product of where we are. I guess, many hope that we would be at this point, and the way that the season ended, maybe they had just figured it out as Tatis was going bonkers. Machado is going bonkers. You mentioned Jackson Merrill picked it up at the back end of the season, played great. Xander Bogaerts, after coming back from that fractured foot, still was hitting the ball well enough. And they just got to figure it out, man. And Ramon Laureano not being there, I think, definitely hurts them. When he was at the bottom of the lineup after they got him from the trade deadline, the Padres were awesome. They were. So, I think there's questions to answer, and how much of that is would Ramon Laureano at the bottom of the lineup helped out a lot more? Do we need to reevaluate guys like unrestricted free agents like Luis Reyes? Do we bring him back, or do we seek other options, or what that will be is going to be very interesting. I know there's been a lot of debate at the top of the lineup with a guy like Luis Reyes too. So those questions, I guess, are going to get answered. And, those are kind of my same questions. I am interested to see what they do with Reyes and, what they do at the top of that lineup. And they try to go for more power OPS type deal, or they just want to get guys on base. Sometimes it worked. It worked in, the first game where Tatis gets on first, Reyes moves him over with a single, Tatis steals third, and they do get that sac fly in for a run. So, there's value to playing, that kind of small ball. Reyes can also bunt, but there's going to be questions like that as we go to the postseason, or the offseason, I should say. The postseason's over. What will the Padres do, and how will they reinvent their lineup? Because, frankly, it just has to be better.
It was a good summation, man. I think what I'm going to conclude today's episode with is my TLDR for the offseason. And what I mean by that is it's like here's how I should say it. The meme of the kid who's looking at the castle, and it could either go in the dark haunted way or the light shining way. Let's go with the dark way. The dark way is that everybody's a year older. Mange Machado is going to be a year older. Yu Darvish is going to be a year older. Joe Musgrove is going to be older. This is a team that already has a high payroll and has shown an interest in lowering it. Not necessarily a ton to the point where they're going to be what they used to be back in 06 or back in 2013 when they can't even pay Chase Headley like $50 million, right? I don't think that's necessarily happening. But with roster constraints, not a team that necessarily is going to be able to hand out a big free agent contracts. And again, that'll be another thing for the offseason, the free agents. So that's not great. The farm system, very depleted, especially after the Leo DeVries trade. On the positive side of things, just to give everybody maybe a silver lining heading into the weekend, right, is Ramon Laureano going to be back next year. Player club option, he's going to be back for sure. Luis Reyes, he's a free agent. I personally don't think that right now that is the type of player that you need in this lineup. And I think that he has not shown that he can be a good player on a good team at the moment. If he returns to 2023 or 2022 level, maybe. But as of right now, don't like the defense. He had a moment in this game when he maybe didn't run as hard as he could, by the way, to first base. We didn't talk about that. Sure. That wasn't great. He's not fast, can't play
Jackson Merrill could have brought him in on a run, potentially.
Exactly.
That ball hit to the corner if he does get the first.
So you might have a new batter there instead of a Reyes at the top of the order. You might have a little bit extra cash there potentially to spend. And speaking of Jackson Merrill, if there's one thing he showed us in the last month and a half of the season and in the postseason is this guy could be a super duper star and be a 7-win player next year. He was in and out of the lineup all year. If you just have him all next year, that might be enough, along with Tatis with his all-around play. And then if you bring back Michael King, considering, like I said, considering he didn't pitch too much, what we talked about with him, your rotation could potentially look like Nick Pivetta, in no order: Nick Pivetta, Yu Darvish, Joe Musgrove coming back from Tommy John, Michael King, and by the way, Yu Darvish is a back-end starter, not the worst thing in the world to root for. And I believe personally, Mason Miller is going to be a starting pitcher next year. I believe that's why they gave up a big prospect. He came into the league as a starter. I think Preller was like, I'm willing to do this because he helps us out this year, and I could turn him into a starting pitcher next year. They've had some luck with that with Seth Lugo in the past, and it's been a little bit of a trend in baseball. So that could be a rotation. That doesn't sound too bad, right? You have Laureano. You still could have a guy like Sheets, a cheap, decent bat. So there are silver linings for this team to keep an eye out on. You have Freddie Fermin for the whole year, right? A decent, solid catcher. More of a backup, but a solid catcher at the very minimum, who's going to have good defense, going to call games, and all that sort of stuff. Ethan Salas, their top prospect remaining. At the very minimum, from what I've been told, extremely gifted defender at the minimum. So maybe he becomes your backup next year. That feels pretty good. So basically what I'm trying to say is it's not all over, but I'd be lying to you if I didn't be full disclosure. I said it many times this year. I said it last year, right after the playoffs ended. I said it this year at the beginning of the season. It really feels like 2024 was the year. It really does. 2025 was a little bit more of the corpse of a great 2024 team, a corpse that was lingering on, right? It was Doctor Strange in that one movie when he's carrying the dead body, right? Like he's still doing stuff with it, right? He's Deadpool. You can't put him down, right? But still a little bit weaker. But we'll have to see, guys. We'll have to see. But that's it, man. That's it. Karthik, man.
Wrapped it
Tough
up.
out here. It's tough out here, man.
Yeah.
It happens. Everybody, thank you, as always, for tuning into the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Leave your comments in the comment section below. I imagine we're going to get a lot of Dodgers fun people using the term Madres, and that's a self-tell and self-report when you use that as an insult. But I'm looking forward to the comments. We'll be answering them all throughout next week, all the comments, all the takes. And again, we're still back next week. Going to be talking free agents, big questions, all sorts of stuff. It's not going to be fun necessarily. It's not going to be thrilling, and I understand some people might not want to even listen or talk about the Padres for weeks, but I will be here if you would like, potentially being your little therapist on the side. And of course, go check out Karthik over at CBS 8 Sports San Diego. My man, any final words before we depart?
Hopefully next season's better, man.
Hopefully next season. There's always next year. Thank you everybody for listening, and until next time, stay safe and of course stay faithful, my Friar Faithful homies. Take care.